The hospital smelled of antiseptic and sounded like silence, the kind that presses down on you until every heartbeat feels too loud. I had come in expecting a routine checkup, something ordinary, nothing more than blood pressure, weight, and the usual chatter. But the doctor never looked me in the eye. His hands trembled as he typed on the computer, his gaze cutting toward the door every few seconds, as if someone might burst in at any moment. My stomach twisted, sensing something off, but I told myself it was just my nerves. Then, as he pretended to review my file, he slid a folded piece of paper under the chart. His fingers barely touched mine, but that tiny motion burned into me. I glanced down, pulse racing, and in hurried scrawl were words that turned my blood cold. "Don't go home. Run." My breath caught in my throat. My first thought was absurd. This had to be some kind of joke, some cryptic mistake. Before I could react, the nurse pushed open the door, clipboard in hand. I shoved the note into my pocket so quickly I nearly ripped it. My skin prickled, as if I had just hidden something dangerous. The rest of the exam blurred into background noise. His questions were robotic, his tone hollow, and I couldn't focus on anything except the weight of that note burning against my leg. Why me? Was this insanity or a warning of something real? My mind churned with questions I was too afraid to ask aloud. I stole one more glance at him. His eyes finally met mine, and what I saw there wasn't madness. It was fear. A kind of raw, unfiltered terror that didn't belong in the eyes of a man who dealt with life and death every day. That look told me more than words ever could. The fluorescent light above flickered, buzzing faintly, throwing his face into stuttering shadows. It felt like a sign, a ripple in the normal that I could no longer ignore. I thought about asking him outright, but something in me froze. If he was this scared, then whatever he was protecting me from wasn't something I could handle with a question and an answer. My chest tightened, my throat dry, and I nodded as if everything was fine, as if I hadn't just been handed a secret that might unravel my life. When I finally left the room, the hallway felt longer than it had ever been. I walked slowly, gripping my bag, fingers brushing the folded paper as though touching it might make its meaning dissolve. But the words didn't change. They echoed louder with every step I took. Outside, the evening air wrapped around me, heavy and uncertain. I pressed the note deeper into my pocket, whispering under my breath. What could possibly be waiting for me at home? I stepped out of the hospital doors with my head down, forcing my face into something resembling calm. To anyone watching, I must have looked like a girl leaving after a normal appointment, phone in one hand, bag over my shoulder. But inside, I was unraveling. Each step away from the sterile halls felt louder than the last, my heartbeat pounding, like footsteps chasing me. The city outside carried on as if nothing had shifted, yet every sound was sharp, every shadow stretched too long, every stranger's glance lingered too heavy. My house key dug into the lining of my pocket, pressing against me like it wanted to remind me where I belonged. But the thought of that place, the front door, the porch light, the quiet windows, sent a chill through me. That house had stopped feeling like home long before the note. I remembered the nights when the phone rang with no one on the other end, the way the line carried only faint breathing or static. Or I remembered the SUV that parked across from my street 3 nights in a row, the same one that drove off the second I stepped outside. I had told myself it was coincidence, paranoia. Now, with the doctor's words etched into me, I couldn't dismiss any of it. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling, and dialed my best friend. Just hearing her voice would steady me, I thought. But the moment the call connected, before I could speak, the line hissed with static. A crackle, then silence, then a faint mechanical echo of my own breath. Someone else was there. Someone was listening. My chest tightened, and I hung up without a word, clutching the phone like it had betrayed me. At the bus station, the fluorescent lights buzzed above my head, harsh and unwelcoming. I bought a ticket without thinking too hard about where it would take me. Just far enough from my street, from that key, from whatever waited in the shadows of home. My hands shook as I slid the crumpled bills across the counter, the woman behind the glass eyeing me like she could sense the panic leaking through my skin. Sitting on the hard plastic seat in the terminal, I pressed my bag close, rehearsing the questions in my head. Was I overreacting to a scribbled note from a nervous doctor? Was I running from nothing but my own imagination? Or was I about to survive something everyone else would walk straight into? The bus hissed to a stop, doors opening wide, and I moved without hesitation. I climbed the steps, claimed a seat by the window, and pressed my forehead to the cool glass. My street, my supposed sanctuary, flickered in my memory as the city blurred into streaks of light and movement. I clutched my bag tighter, swallowing the weight of fear and doubt. The bus rumbled forward, and as my neighborhood slipped further, into distance, a thought carved itself deep inside me. Maybe this decision, this one act of running, was the only thing keeping me alive. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, the kind of place where curtains never fully close and locks don't quite click shut. I dropped my bag on the bed, still buzzing with adrenaline, and flicked on the TV for noise, for distraction. The screen crackled to life with the local news. My breath caught when the anchor's expression hardened, her voice calm but rehearsed. A gas leak has been reported in the Maplewood neighborhood. Emergency crews have evacuated several homes and blocked surrounding streets. Maplewood, my street, my home. The footage rolled. Bright yellow tape stretched across the corner, flashing lights painting the night. The anchor's tone was too smooth, too careful, each word delivered like a script. Something in me bristled. It wasn't just the gas leak story that felt wrong. It was how quickly it appeared on air, how neatly the details were packaged. It felt less like news and more like a cover. I reached for my phone and dialed my neighbor, Mrs. Calhoun, who never missed a chance to gossip about anything happening on the block. Her phone should have rung, should have carried that familiar, impatient hello. Instead, the line clicked and fell silent. Then came the flat, unforgiving tone. Disconnected. My stomach knotted. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, the cheap lamp buzzing faintly. The words on the note replayed in my mind like a drum beat. Don't go home. Run. A truth began clawing its way through the fog of denial. The doctor hadn't been paranoid. He had saved me from walking into something I might never have walked out of. Around 1 a.m., the room felt heavier, the silence stretching too long between the hum of passing cars outside. I pulled the curtain back just enough to peer into the parking lot. My chest tightened. A black SUV sat idling under the broken streetlight, engine rumbling low, headlights off. My breath went shallow. I knew that shape, that shadow. It was the same kind of vehicle I'd seen across from my house, parked for hours, vanishing the second I stepped outside. Now it was here. For a moment, panic ripped through me, sharp and electric. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, my throat. But then, beneath the terror, something colder settled in. A realization. If they had followed me here, then the note wasn't just a warning. It was confirmation. This wasn't random. I was being hunted, tracked. And somehow, the doctor had known. I let the curtain fall back into place, heart hammering, but my hands steady now. Fear was still there, but it had transformed, hardened into something sharper. Not just survival, but defiance. I wasn't running blindly anymore. I was awake. Then, just as my body began to settle into this cold new truth, the motel phone rang. A single sharp jolt of sound in the silence. Once. Only once. I froze, staring at it, waiting for a second ring that never came. After a long, suffocating pause, the line went dead. Morning light spilled weakly through the motel curtains, turning the stained carpet a dull, sickly gold. I hadn't slept. Not really. My body had dozed in fragments, but my mind never shut off. The SUV, the phone call, the news. It all wound into a knot I couldn't untangle. By dawn, one thought had rooted itself in me. I needed answers, and only one man had them. I left before sunrise, blending into the early commuters. Hood pulled up, eyes scanning every shadow. The hospital loomed ahead. Too clean, too normal, as though it hadn't been the place where my entire life had cracked open. I slipped through the automatic doors, heart hammering, and kept my head low. Patients shuffled in wheelchairs. Nurses moved briskly with clipboards. No one looked at me twice. I found him in a side corridor near radiology. His shoulders slumped, his skin pale under the harsh lights. The confident posture of a doctor was gone. He looked like a man carrying something too heavy for too long. When his eyes met mine, relief flickered, but it was short-lived. He grabbed my arm, pulling me into a deserted hallway, where the only sound was the distant beep of machines. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered, voice raw. "Then tell me why you gave me that note," I shot back, holding his gaze. "Why? Can't I go home?" His hands trembled as he dragged them down his face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he leaned closer, words barely above a breath. "It's your family. Your father owes money. Dangerous people. They were going to collect. And you were leverage." The floor tilted beneath me. My father? He wasn't perfect, but he was solid, dependable. Or so I had believed. I shook my head. "No, he wouldn't. They planned last night," he cut in, his eyes glassy with exhaustion. "That gas leak on your street? It wasn't a leak, it was cover. They were supposed to break in, take you before anyone noticed. That's why I wrote the note. I couldn't let you walk into it." The betrayal landed like a blade between my ribs. My father's face swam in my mind. Every birthday he had missed, every time he brushed off my questions about money. Had it all been threads? In this web? My throat tightened as the pieces began to connect. The strange SUV, the phone static, the locked accounts. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn manila envelope, pressing it into my hands. It felt heavier than paper should. "This has what I could find," he said. "Receipts, names, photographs, enough to show you the truth. But if they knew I gave you this..." His voice trailed off, eyes darting nervously to the end of the hall. I clutched the envelope, its edges cutting into my palms. My chest burned with fury and disbelief. But beneath that, something else was forming. Resolve. The kind that comes when there's no choice left but to fight smart. Walking out of that hospital, I knew one thing for certain. My survival wasn't about escaping strangers anymore. It depended on outsmarting the very bloodline I once trusted. I sat alone in the motel room with the envelope spread open on the bed, its contents spilling across the faded quilt. Names scribbled in margins, photocopied documents, grainy photographs. Each page carried the weight of a story I didn't want to believe, but every line was mine. My name, my information, my life, weaponized against me. The papers pulled me backward into memories I'd long buried. That house, the one I used to call home, was never soft or safe. It was a cage built of expectations and cold silences. My parents, always reminding me I owed them, that I existed to follow their rules. My siblings, smirking when I resisted, quick to tell me I'd never make it out there alone. Even the walls of my bedroom had felt like they leaned in, holding secrets I was never allowed to speak. But the past months, those memories had twisted into something sharper. The bank account I'd worked years to build suddenly drained. I thought it was fraud, some stranger with a stolen card. But the withdrawal slips had my signature, perfectly forged. The night I applied for a new ID, only to be told one had already been issued in my name. The property papers I swore I never touched, signed over as though I'd willingly handed everything away. Each incident had been a blow I tried to explain, away, patching up my life with excuses. Now, looking at the evidence, the truth pressed down on me with suffocating clarity. It hadn't been outsiders. It had been them. My family. The ones who knew my handwriting well enough to forge it, who had access to my documents, who could smile in my face while pulling the ground out from under me. The doctor's notes confirmed their debts, their arrangements, their plan to leave me not just penniless but erased. A body without a trace, an identity scrubbed from the books. The words formed in my head, sharp as glass. They wanted me erased, on paper and in flesh. My chest heaved, and I pressed my hands to my eyes, letting the tears burn. For a moment, I broke. Every betrayal folding in on me at once. The child who had begged for approval, the adult who had worked for independence. All of it crushed beneath the knowledge that my own blood had signed my disappearance like a business deal. But in that breaking, something else rose up. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to spend my life patching up the holes they cut into me. My breath slowed, steadied, and I looked at the mess of papers through a new lens. They thought they had ended me, but I was still here, and that meant they hadn't won. Leaning over the table, I whispered into the silence, tasting the words like steel on my tongue. If they want me gone, I'll vanish on my own terms. The doctor met me in a cafe far from the hospital, a place where the smell of burnt coffee clung to the air, and the hum of traffic drowned out whispered words. He slid into the booth across from me with a manila folder under his arm, his eyes darting to every corner before he spoke. We were allies now, bound by danger neither of us had asked for. He knew channels I never would have found on my own. Anonymous. Whistleblower groups, lawyers who specialized in exposing financial crimes, contacts who had spent their lives hiding truths in plain sight. Together, we began to map it out, page by page, building a timeline of how carefully my life had been dismantled. Mortgage transfers appeared first, papers that shifted property from my name into someone else's. The signatures were mine, but only on the surface. Each stroke mimicked my handwriting, but there was a cold precision in it, a practice that spoke of familiarity. Then came the insurance policy I'd never heard of, tucked away in a bank's archives. My name listed as the insured, my family as the beneficiaries. My skin crawled as I stared at the black ink spelling out my worth not in love, but in dollars. Surveillance. Logs followed. Evidence of the SUV I had noticed outside my street, the motel, even the grocery store. Photos grainy yet undeniable. They hadn't just wanted me gone. They had stalked me like prey, waiting for the right night to strike. Every page piled higher on the table, and with each one, the weight inside me shifted. Grief for the family. I thought I had bled into anger, and that anger hardened into something unshakable. They had carved me out of my own life, but they hadn't silenced me. Not yet. That night, back in the motel, I pulled the house key from my bag. Its metal was worn smooth from years of use, a symbol of the place I once believed was mine. I set it on the nightstand, struck a match, and held the flame close until the metal glowed faintly. I couldn't burn the key itself, but I let the fire eat the piece of paper I'd wrapped around it, the old address written in my handwriting. The flames curled it to ash, the last tie to a home that had never truly been one. As the ashes scattered into the trash can, a strange calm settled over me. My family thought they had buried me in their lies, but they had underestimated the one thing they couldn't steal: my will to fight back. I pressed my palms against the table, steadying myself, and felt the words form like a vow inside me. I'll make them choke on the empire they tried to steal from me. I typed the message with steady hands, though my pulse thudded like a drum inside my chest. I'll be home tonight. Don't wait up. Short, ordinary, nothing that would hint at what I was truly planning. I hit send and slipped the phone into my pocket. The bait was set. The doctor had already done his part, reaching out to the authorities who had been circling the case for weeks, waiting for undeniable evidence. He'd arranged for them to listen in, to record every whisper, every slip of truth, once my family gathered. All I had to do was light the fuse. By dusk, the house I once called home glowed softly under its porch light, the same way it always had. But tonight, it was no longer mine. It was a stage, and every player inside was about to be unmasked. Through the cracked blinds, I saw movement. My father pacing, my siblings clustered in the kitchen, their voices hushed but tense. They were waiting for me, expecting me to walk through the door like a lamb returning to the slaughter. Outside, the black SUV idled once more, parked like a sentinel at the curb. Its presence no longer made me tremble. It only confirmed that I had been right to run, right to fight. I crouched behind a neighbor's fence across the street, hidden in shadows, my breath fogging in the cold night air. From this distance, I could almost hear the anxious murmurs spilling through the walls. Then the street erupted. Sirens split the quiet, flashing red and blue cutting across the night. Doors slammed, boots thundered against pavement. The front door burst open, splintering under force, and suddenly the house swarmed with officers. My family's voices rose, in panic, shouting over one another, the performance unraveling in real time. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. The charges cracked like gunshots, each one louder than the last. My father's protests faltered when the documents were read aloud. The signatures, the policies, the recordings. My siblings' denials dissolved into shrieks as handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists. I watched as masks ripped away, the polished facade of a family shattered under the weight of truth. The SUV driver was pulled out too, forced to his knees, his silence no longer protection. Their empire of lies collapsed in a matter of minutes, every secret dragged into the open. My body trembled, not with fear this time, but with release. The chains I'd carried since childhood, the invisible ties of obligation and control, snapped one by one. I was no longer their daughter, their sister, their pawn. I was just me, unclaimed, untethered, alive. As the authorities led them out, struggling and shouting, one voice broke through the chaos. My father's, raw with rage. He spotted movement in the shadows, maybe only the tilt of my head, the glint of my eyes. His scream tore across the night. My name. I turned away before the sound reached me, my steps steady, my face hidden. While he roared like a caged animal, I walked into the darkness, unseen, finally free. Weeks slipped by, marked not by chaos but by quiet, the kind of silence I had never known before. I settled in a city where no one knew my name, in a small apartment with walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's radio, but solid enough to make me feel safe. There were no luxuries, no polished furniture, no gleaming view of the skyline, but I woke each morning with air in my lungs that felt like my own. I spent nights at the window, watching the traffic blur into streaks of light, and thought about the place I once called home. I realized now that home had never been bricks or walls, never the weight of family portraits or keys pressed into my palm. Home was safety, and I built mine out of truth. The grief still lived inside me, a shadow of what I lost, but it no longer dictated my steps. I didn't forgive them, not my father, not my siblings. Their betrayal ran too deep, their lies too deliberate. But the weight they had piled on me, the invisible anchor of obligation, had been cut loose. I carried only myself now. On the desk by the window sat a single frame. Inside it was the note, creased from the night it had saved me. "Don't go home. Run." The words once read like terror, a sentence that had splintered my life. Now, they looked like salvation. The doctor's trembling hand had given me more than a warning. He had given me a way forward, a chance to rewrite my story before it ended. Every day I glanced at that note, and it reminded me of the line I had walked between life and disappearance. I had not fought them in their arena, not screamed or clawed for their attention. I had done something far quieter, far more powerful. I had left. And in leaving, I had won. I closed my eyes one night, listening to the hum of the city outside, and felt the truth settle inside me like an echo. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when to run.